Once again, I'd like to thank you for following this presentation about the Florida Bay Seagrass Environmental Management Plan for 2020. Today we will be talking about management and alternatives. My name is John Crandall, and this is for the American Public University Environmental Management course, Spring 2020. Once again, I'd like to revisit our vision statement, which is to revitalize the natural condition of the Florida Bay to pre-1980s conditions, thus allowing for flora and fauna to flourish while encouraging the recovery of endangered and threatened species. Once again, our overarching goals are to increase the flow of fresh water into the Florida Bay, decrease the flow of excessive nutrients and toxins that contribute to algae blooms and seagrass die-offs, support the ecological monitoring of the bay by the National Park Service, advocate for increased vegetation protective measures, and develop and present educational workshops to the public to support the recovery of seagrass environments. As stated, we want to increase the flow of fresh water into the Florida Bay. Now, our group can't do too much about this, but we can support the Everglades National Park Restoration Project and the recovery of the Taylor Slough of fresh water for the South Florida Watershed Management Group. Generally, we'll just look at manpower or research if they need it. There's not a whole lot of alternatives for this idea. However, when you think about the decrease the flow of excessive nutrients and toxins that contribute to algae blooms, we want to make sure we reduce the fertilizer and herbicide runoff from communities and agricultural areas. This is a lot of outreach and public education and an advertising campaign to educate these people and remind them that let's not do this. For the commercial waste, it's important to contact the commercial industries and say, hey, let's try to reduce their waste coming out. Maybe inform them of what is happening, once their product leaves their compound. Beyond that, we also thought about settling tanks and filters for them, but it's a cost that we can't enforce on other companies. All we can do is encourage this. And additionally, we want to worry about our soil destabilization from agricultural aspects. Again, it's a matter of educating the areas around agriculture for their soil, and let's try to keep the soil in the fields instead of in our streams and into the bay. We would recognize that a success rate of 10% decrease in the amount of chemicals and sediments that flow into the bay annually would be great, and also a 20% decrease in the volume size of algae blooms. We want to support the ecological monitoring of the bay of the National Park Service, and by doing that, we'd like to add 5 more sensory stations for water quality, sulfides, and salinity. We thought about having people do it and having monitors do it to have regular and timely issues. We've discovered that we would much prefer to have equipment do it, although we do realize that calibration and regular checks to ensure proper monitoring would be needed. We also want to add nitrogen and phosphorus monitoring stations in addition to what's already out there, and have all this tie into the National Park Service. Additionally, all this information will be open source, so anybody could obtain this information and use it appropriately. And finally, we want to add visitor experience surveys. Because of our technology today and a wide range of people who like paper technology, we want to add mobile, computer, paper, and 1-800 numbers as ways for people to express or complete these surveys. A success rate would be getting 2 water quality stations the first year and 3 more the following year, and then for the nitrogen and phosphorus stations, 5 the first year and 5 more the following year. And the surveys we want operational at the end of the first year, and with the goal of having 250 surveys come in every year. in addition to all the other scientific calibrations that we get. This way we can get a qualitative view and not just a quantitative view. Of course, we want to protect our vegetation. A lot of this is through the boating environment, which seems to be a big part of damaging these seagrass areas. So we definitely want to try to limit those activities around seagrass beds. One of the biggest issues is that they plow paths through the beds, which separate the environment and makes it hard for recovery. So trying to, increase the restricted areas and non-powered locomotion is going to be a hard aspect to push, but it will be beneficial in the long run to do this, but it's going to have to be a lower priority, especially on the enforcement end, because manpower and money to have the enforcement on the waterways is extremely difficult. Although we would like to see a 50% reduction in new damage paths annually. Education, that's probably one of the easier ways to get the information out there and try to change people's behavior. And this is by going through agricultural and boating organizations and environmental groups. We realize that trying to add it to school curriculums to try to educate the young is going to be very difficult, so we've selected against it at this time. We would hopefully have these educational workshops have an attendance of 300 people annually, so over a course of period the information spreads. And overall, we'd like to see an annual success rate seeing a 5% increase in seagrass coverage in the entire Bay Area. So each year it would increase 5% than what it was the previous year. And also we'd like to see a 5% increase in species recovery, both in number of species there and the types that return to the area. These are my reference for further understanding, and thank you for your time.